Hi guys, KL here, and your first webcomic needs to be as small as possible. You are doing your first webcomic too big. And I'm going to get straight to the meat and potatoes here, okay? When first wanting to tell a story, it usually has many characters, a long story, many fights, and a lot of world building, right? The only reason I know this is because I have done the same thing more than once. I believe it's our nature to want to tell a grandiose story that when we think about it ourselves, it brings us joy and excitement. Why wouldn't we want to tell this story to everyone else, right? There's nothing wrong with this. However, for your first project, you want to be as small as possible and as quick as possible. Also, your first piece of work is probably going to have many problems with it, and that's 100% fine, right? But the more problems you can learn from in your first comic is less problems in your second comic, right? So doing your first comic is like small, and having it not be so as important, is so much you can learn from. Now, there are many reasons to make your comic small, but most important is burnout. The reason 95% of people who say they want to do webcomics, right? They want to do webcomics for a living, stop after only 3 months, is because they didn't achieve anything at all during this time, right? Releasing your first piece of work as soon as possible will give you something to point to as an achievement, or like it will provide you with experiences and knowledge only found through publishing yourself, right? It's such a great learning experience. The worst thing you can do for yourself is have a comic that you won't be publishing for 9 months, meaning that that's how long it will take for pre-production, and then on top of that, you have another 5 years to actually complete it, right? It's too big a scope. Yes, you can do it, but you don't know if you'll be doing comics in the next 6 months. You might quit, you might find another passion, you might get a full-time job, and then now you don't have time, right? Yes, you can, keep at it for that period of time, but I don't recommend it. Now, I know I'm discouraging you right now, but the truth is, it's the truth, right? And you just have to accept the fact that doing a smaller piece of work might be for the best. Now, I do have some advice that I would recommend if you're having trouble wrapping your head around creating a smaller story or as like a one-shot, because I had trouble with the same thing. My ideas are always massive and out of this world, right? But we really need to bring it into just a singular story. So my advice is to create a Simpsons episode. Now, you don't really have to create a Simpsons episode, okay? But how a Simpsons story starts and how a Simpsons story ends, is in the same episode, right? They don't have an overarching narrative. They just introduce what is happening, let it happen, and then it ends. Your first story can be complex. I'm not saying it needs to be simple, right? But it needs to have a satisfying ending. It needs to start the story, it needs to end the story. So that's my recommendation for your first webcomic. Create a Simpsons episode, you know what I mean? And keep the scope small. This will be the best thing for you in the end, and for your career. Now, small tip to just finish the video off, for writers that will be wanting someone else to draw your work, think about how much you can pay for your work, and then determine how many panels or even chapters that you can pay for or even want to pay for. This is like another restriction that someone who is paying needs to consider when writing, or someone who draws the comic themselves can be more flexible with the panel count. As someone myself who pays someone, I have to come up with a budget and I have to allocate the budget where I want, and sometimes panels have to get cut, and sometimes money has to go elsewhere for like a cover, for colors, for lettering. It's very complicated, so when paying, you really have to break down your budget. Otherwise, you want to spend $500 and you end up spending $1,500, So keep that in mind as a writer, you know. And I hope this helped you. Remember, just for your first comic, keep it small. Tell a fun story, and fail, because if you fail, you'll learn from it, and your second story will be so much better. Okay, I hope this helps you along your journey, and I can't wait to read your 500-page comics. They're going to be great. Please check out Laser Tag League on Webtoon, and, you know, subscribe to the channel if you like. Bye, bye, bye.